Welcome to another edition of the Big News Roundup. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has raked over the coals for making a hypocritical war comment. Representative Ilhan Omar, she wants the Trump administration to pay her state hundreds of millions of dollars for Operation Metro Surge. President Trump issues yet another stark warning to Iran, and you'll never guess which Hollywood classic has just been named the greatest action movie of all time. All this and a bunch more, it's coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have a great deal to get to today, and we begin with this. As if permitting billions of dollars of taxpayer money to be stolen right under his bulbous nose isn't enough, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz now being brutally mocked online for his hypocritical take on international affairs. According to reports, shortly after learning that a missile strike had killed Iran's supreme leader Khamenei, Walz revealed his feelings to the entire world by releasing a straightforward three-word social media post in which he simply says, "No new wars." I also have a three-word news roundup post, "No new fraud." Too soon, Governor? Almost instantly, and ever since then, the Democratic governor has been met with a barrage of stinging abuse for his absurd and ill-timed comment, including a variety of sarcastic and biting remarks from outraged citizens on both sides of the aisle. I've always said it, he's an absurd, tone-deaf loon. As you might expect, a number of hardline Republicans are taking the most extreme exception to the governor's stance, including some who argue that Walz would be better off supporting the war because it temporarily takes the spotlight away from his state's staggering welfare fraud. In one particular case, Florida Congressman Randy Fine speaks for many by speculating that Walz may have actually been foolish enough to make his comment simply because he's worried that the war might impact his Somali kickbacks. And correction, alleged Somali kickbacks. Meanwhile, quite a few others took time out of their day to kindly point out to Governor Fraud, Big Bad Tim Walz, that it was actually the Islamic Republic which started the war 47 years ago, and that's when they took dozens of Americans hostage. Talked about on this program right here yesterday. One former diplomat actually wondering why Walz didn't bother to crack open a book, do a little research, some reading before posting his ridiculous nonsense. Furthermore, a bunch of other folks are piling on and accusing the governor of being a stone-cold hypocrite. In particular, they point to a post he made following his prior meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in which he says that Minnesota stands with the people of Ukraine in their fight to defend freedom and democracy. Well, speak up, man. No wars or more wars. Where are you at on this one? Additionally, others are pointing their finger directly at Walz for stoking the flames of anti-ICE resistance in the recent Minneapolis protests and accusing him of trying to start his own personal war with President Trump. A war he'll never win, by the way. In the meantime, let's face it, the poor governor has his hands completely full. And earlier this week, Republican lawmakers in Minnesota formally introduced a resolution calling for his impeachment, accusing both him and his attorney general, you know him well, Keith Ellison, of what they call corrupt conduct. And that's being generous. Though the odds are against the measure ever passing before he leaves office, it also charges Walz with violating his constitutional oath to faithfully execute the laws of his state. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Here's the bottom line, and it's really as simple as this. Some people just don't know when to shut their fat traps. And this Governor Tim Walz fella, Tragic Tim I call him, yeah, he's one of those people. Now check it out. Some sobering facts to share about the Democratic Party's $9 billion wonder boy. The one I call Slimy Swindler from St. Paul. Say it with me. It'll make you feel real good. In 3, 2, 1. Slimy Swindler from St. Paul. That does feel kind of good. As we made very clear right here on the program yesterday, time and again, Iran has threatened to destroy Israel. They've made credible and perpetual threats against the U.S. as well. And it would appear as though Kamala Harris's former best bud, Timmy Boy, he has no issue with the manner in which the Islamic regime treats their own precious citizens. Under the former gentle watch of the now dead forever Ayatollah Khomeini, here's what's reportedly been happening in Iran. Mass killings, executions, children being tortured, communications blackouts, and tons more. It's a filthy, disgusting regime. On top of that, until we hit them this past weekend, Iran still had nuclear ambitions, and were Tim Walz in charge, he would have turned a blind eye, cower in a corner, maybe belt out a couple of verses of Kumbaya. That'll fix everything. And then he'd simply hope for the best. Now, look, in Tragic Tim's defense, I sort of kind of get it. He lives in a mansion which taxpayers foot the bill for, gets a free car and security guards, a fancy six-figure salary, and more. With so much on his plate, and while he single-handedly tries to dismantle and destroy the fine state of Minnesota, there's little time left over to contemplate the insignificant things in life, like human rights, national security, and global welfare. No new wars, nothing more than a tired old slogan that blockhead Tim lifted from somebody else, and that thick-headed phrase does nothing but enable murderous dictator thugs all over the planet to pillage their own country while crafting designs to take over the entire world. And with that, moving along, we're going to stick with a bit of a related topic now and shift our focus to yet another outrageous cash grab by our favorite Somalia-born grifter congresswoman. Yeah, the one and only gazillionaire Ilhan Omar, the ill one. She's the gift that keeps on giving. Or in this case, more like the gift that kind of keeps on taking. In her latest effort, which is doomed to fail, the not-so-esteemed lawmaker from Minnesota now trying to shake down the Trump administration for hundreds of millions of dollars, which she claims they owe her state for the economic damage caused by their recent Operation Metro surge. Taking it a step further, Omar has now compiled a list of 5 specific conditions which she claims need to be met in order to compensate her state for what she calls the Trump administration's militarized campaign of fear, that is. I think I love her more each day, especially when she gets all kind of melodramatic and junk. I kind of like that. Among other things, her terms call for independent investigations into the killing and harassment of American citizens, the implementation of significant new accountability measures by Congress, and last but not least, the complete dismantling of ICE. Well, a good point on the count of ICE sort of waters down my root beer, so I might sign off on that. Cutting to the chase, she's also putting her foot down and demanding what she calls restitution for Minnesota's families and businesses, and according to her, the Democratic-run city of Minneapolis alone, they estimate they've lost more than $200 million during just one single month of the recent ICE surge. And that's just for starters, according to her. She goes on to figure that by the time all the expenses related to the immigration enforcement operation are added together, it's going to cost her state's small businesses, workers, and local cities a heck of a lot more than that. And in her humble little opinion, federal relief should pick up the tab.
And $10 million in tens. You want any fives with that?
Well, you can most likely guess the bulk of the rest of her message because it's more of the same old song and dance. The good old inverted Watusi. In a nutshell, she says Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem has to go, that we need to take concrete steps to safeguard our democracy. Look at her calling all the shots. And that her fellow outraged and grieving Minnesotans are determined to seek justice for what they say, what they believe was an unjustifiable abuse of federal force. You want some Velveeta with that wine, honey? In the meantime, cash-hungry Minnesota now suing the Trump administration as well in order to stop them from withholding nearly $250 million in Medicaid funding, which they're temporarily halting over fraud concerns in that fine state. Final thoughts, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Right off the bat, I'm not a drinking man, but whatever Madam Omar is pouring down her gullet, make mine a double, and if it's possible, maybe even a triple with a twisty straw and a couple of maraschino cherries. And go easy on the ice, if you know what I mean. Hey, here's the deal. Short on time, long on reality checks. She's delusional, and here's what's up. Operation Metro Surge was 100% lawful and had nothing to do with a fear campaign. That's a tired, old, boring, and pathetic excuse for vilifying those who are trying to enforce immigration law. It's also a polite way of saying when you get in the way, sometimes you get hurt. The $30 million government employee claims that thousands of Minnesotans exercising their First Amendment rights were tear gassed, shot with so-called non-lethal rounds, and harassed. Correction, some were tear gassed and hit with non-lethal rounds, not thousands. And those who were hit were done so because they were clearly interfering with law enforcement. Tell the whole story. Out of the mouth of babes, another classic line from Omar the orator, Omar the Great, who says Congress must withhold condition funding for agencies that engage in unconstitutional and unlawful conduct. Let me think about that. I think we're onto something. Actually, I couldn't agree more. Therefore, moving forward, effective immediately, like right now, Congress should withhold any funding for government agencies in Minnesota for their role in what amounts to billions and billions of dollars worth of fraud in that state. In my mind, those agencies might include, and I'm just kind of thinking out loud, Minnesota Department of Human Services, also Minnesota Department of Education, Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, and so on and so on. You get the idea. You feel me, Ms. Omar? We'll cut the funding until such time as we can recover the $9 billion worth of fraud in your state. Now, I think this is what they call common ground, simpatico. We're finally on the same page. And the truth, it may sting just a little bit, but there it is. Yeah, the truth is a bitter pill to swallow, sort of like having your appendix yanked out of your belly. It's inconvenient, hurts a heck of a lot, and nobody wants to go through it. And it also leaves behind a nasty little scar. Our shifting priorities now and turning our attention to a stark warning from President Trump concerning the rapidly escalating war in the Middle East. As the devastating battle against Iranian tyranny continues to spread across the entire Gulf region, our commander-in-chief now says that it's become too late to hold any further talks. Talking is done with Iran, and that if necessary, our country has enough munitions to fight forever. Furthermore, he goes on to claim that the Islamic Republic's Air Force, Navy, and defense systems already toast, along with most of their leadership, and that moving forward, we're locked, stocked, and we are ready to win big. In the past, he has said bigly. Either way, big or bigly. Kind of like bigly. In the meantime, the death toll in Iran climbing precipitously, with Israel launching massive airstrikes against key military targets within that country, including missile batteries, weapons factories, a nuclear research facility, and a bunch more, as you can well imagine. Additionally, according to reports, the Israeli Air Force recently obliterated a building where Iran's top clerics were meeting to choose a new supreme leader, thus throwing yet another monkey wrench into their failing succession plans. However, we have just learned moments ago that the son of the former Ayatollah, I might get the name wrong because it just came through moments ago, Mojtaba Khomeini, apparently survived that attack and has reportedly been named the new supreme leader. For their part, what's left of Tehran is recency as a returning fire by lobbying dozens of ballistic missiles at Israel while simultaneously launching wide-ranging drone attacks against soft targets spread throughout the entire Gulf region. Now, one such attack actually hit the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia, and Iran's provocative assault on civilian infrastructure is now threatening to draw a number of other countries into the war. And we've said it a number of times over the past several months on this program. It kind of feels every now and again like we're dangling on the precipice of World War III. These are dangerous times. Among those other nations, by the way, currently getting drawn into the fray, Lebanon, where Hezbollah is now battling Israeli forces, and Qatar, or Qatar as some folks say, who say they've just shot down a couple of Iranian warplanes during an attack on their territory. Meanwhile, all Americans are now being urged to leave the Middle East, and President Trump says the U.S. Navy could escort oil tankers through the vital Strait of Hormuz, and according to officials, we currently have near total control over all of Iran's airspace, meaning it's just a matter of time before Tehran runs out of options and the job will finally be completely done. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Here's the thing. We're kind of long on news today. We are short on time, so I'm going to keep this portion very brief. You already know more than you ever wanted to know right now about Iran. The Ayatollah was taken out over the weekend, and the country, as we just pointed out, has chosen for now their new leader. So, the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, he's a bit of a lame duck, lacking in any real power, and he's not universally well regarded by a large chunk of Iran's population. Hopefully, our goals in Iran will be achieved rapidly, the most critical of which is to ensure that they do not become a nuclear power. And as the Trump administration has indicated, this war could be wrapped up in as little as 5 weeks. So, the Islamic regime in Iran is an evil theocracy. The people of Iran deserve more, they deserve better, and this very moment in history is a prime opportunity for all Iranians to stand up, band together, and take back their country. Now, in case you didn't know, the people of Iran are absolutely fantastic. And personally, I have tons of Persian friends right here in L.A. Persian culture, absolutely delightful. The food is unbeatable. And their passion for life is absolutely intoxicating. And finally, if you would today, please take a moment out of your day. Pray for the fine people of Iran. It's a big event happening right now. Their future is at stake. Pray for our armed forces as well. And don't forget to say a prayer for the President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, who is right now endeavoring to make repairs to a decades-old monumental life and death issue. Moving along now to an alarming congressional report concerning the growing military threat posed to our homeland by the Chinese Communist regime. According to the head of the U.S. Navy, China currently making extremely rapid advances when it comes to the capabilities of their nuclear submarines, and he warns that in the near future, the very near future, they may be able to target large portions of our country without ever leaving their territorial waters. That's a lot to think about. He says right now, China's subs are beginning to incorporate better nuclear reactors, upgraded weapon systems, and better stealth technology as well. Additionally, Navy officials also say that even though we currently have a slight edge when it comes to both quality and the numbers in our sub fleets, the Chinese Communist regime is cranking out their modernized subs at a much more rapid clip. And they warn that if we don't do something about it soon, we could eventually lose our significant advantage, our superiority in the underwater domain. All right, now a couple of additional headlines we're also keeping a very close watch on here in the News Roundup newsroom. Want you to start your day very well informed. And first off, in a bit of a shock, President Trump now says, indeed, planning to break with precedent and attend this spring's upcoming White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington. 47 says he's ending his boycott and that he'll be finally making an appearance at the lighthearted annual event. Not always lighthearted, because they're finally making him the guest of honor. Moving along, rideshare giant Uber says they're getting closer to launching their brand new fleet of all-electric air taxis. Note to the News Roundup executives, I demand a News Roundup air taxi of my very own with an 8-track stereo and air conditioning. They say Uber Air is likely to be up and running in Dubai before the end of this year, and furthermore that they're aiming to operate in major U.S. cities like Los Angeles, our home base, as soon as they get federal approval. Well, I approve. And I want one of those toys, and I want it now.
Don't care how, I want it now.
And turning to the international front, looks like we should all get ready to see a bit of sticker shock as a result of the war in the Middle East, as stock markets across the planet, including here in the U.S., react by falling sharply, while global oil prices continue to creep upward that way instead of the proper way, that way, threatening to wreak havoc with the entire world economy. That means it's going to be sticker shock at the gas pump in no time at all for all of us. All right, moving along, quick gander at a bit of showbiz news before we call it a day. And we kick things off today with wedding bells and a potential trip down the aisle for one of Hollywood's most eligible single men. No, not producer Davey. According to reliable sources at the good old National Enquirer, that's a fine publication, by the way, after the recent death of his mom, 62-year-old hunk Brad Pitt, finally ready to tie the knot once again, and this time he's planning to elope in Europe with his current sweetheart, 33-year-old jewelry designer. I might get her name wrong, but I'll give it a good shot. Ines de Ramon. If I got it wrong, I'll just call her Susie. So congratulations on the pending nuptials, and like they say, third time's a charm. Although in Hollywood they do things a bit different, and sometimes the 8th time's a charm. In fact, I think Elizabeth Taylor was married 8 times, although twice to the same guy. Zsa Zsa Gabor 9 times. I myself have been married 14 or 15 times. Frankly, I lost track. Young lady apparently is easy on the eyes. She has a job selling watches and junk at one of the high-end department stores, Macy's or Kohl's, I don't know. And that means she kind of has her own money. So she's not chasing young Bradley for his dough. So I'm going to sign off on this one. I like it, and I better get invited to the wedding this time. They skipped me the last 2 times. All right, speaking of Hollywood legends, one of the most popular actors in movie history, definitely having one of the best weeks of his entire life. After collecting a prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award from his beloved Screen Actors Guild, 83-year young Han Solo Harrison Ford receiving even better news. His 1981 classic Raiders of the Lost Ark, I love that picture, just been named the greatest crowd-pleasing action movie of all time. You know, we all dig Harrison Ford. Good to know that at the ripe young age of 83, he's still gigging, still winning awards, and word around town is he's a heck of a pilot as well. Licensed to fly helicopters and airplanes. Talented guy. Also, everybody has their favorite Harrison Ford movie, but we all agree that Raiders of the Lost Ark, the greatest action movie of all time. Even better than Ishtar, the other great action movie. I've had enough. I want to go home now. With that, it is time to call it a wrap on the Big News Roundup. Have an awesome day today. Stay safe. If you haven't done so already, it's real basic. Hit that subscribe button right there. And with that, we're going to dim the lights, fade to black, and we'll see you right back here next time for another episode of the Big News Roundup.